Hey guys, welcome back. Last time we learned what a service is and how its lifecycle works from started to bound services. But what if our app could keep working even when it is not in the foreground or not open? Well, that's exactly what we're building today. We're going hands-on and creating our very first started service to perform tasks in the background. Everything we learned about services so far will finally come together, but one step at a time. So to keep things simple, our app will have just two buttons, start download and stop download. When you hit start, our service will quietly run in the background, simulating download progress in the Logcat, so you can see it in action. Sounds good? Let's dive in. First up, let's create a new Java class. I'll right click on the root package, go to new Java class, and let's name it YouTube service. Now we extend it with Android's built-in service class. And just like that, our class is officially ready to perform tasks in the background, no matter if the app is visible or not. Because the service class requires us to override the onBind method. But here's the thing, this method is mainly used for bound services. And since we are building a started service, we don't actually need it right now. So we'll just override it and move on. We'll dive deeper into onBind when we get to bound services later. Now it's time to add some life to our service. We'll override the three main lifecycle methods that every started service relies on: onCreate, onStartCommand, and onDestroy. These methods are like the heartbeat of our service. They tell us when it's born, when it's doing its job, and when it's about to be destroyed. Alright, let's start by overriding onCreate first. Just type onCreate, hit tab, then onStartCommand. Finally, we will wrap things up with onDestroy. And that's it. These three methods are all we need to build a fully working started service. So basically this YouTube class extends the service class, and that's our way to telling Android, hey, this class will handle tasks in the background. If you have seen the previous video, you already know how a started service lifecycle works. All these lifecycle methods we just overrode here will be triggered one after another as soon as we call start service. Also, as you know, onCreate gets called first. Think of this as the setup method. It's called only once when the service is first created in the memory. This is the perfect place to initialize heavy tasks like a background thread, a music player, or even a network API calls. For now we will keep it simple, but let's add a log message so we can confirm when our service is created. So at the top I will quickly create a tag variable. Just type log t, hit tab, done. Now inside onCreate I will type log e, hit tab, then set the message to service created. We'll do the same for onStartCommand, but this time our log will say service started. Finally, inside onDestroy, I will add one last tag, service destroyed. These logs will help us to clearly see which methods is called and in what order, making it easier to track the entire service lifecycle in Logcat. Now once our service class is ready, there's one more important step. We need to register it in the Android manifest.xml file that is over here. And inside the application tag, we'll add this angle bracket service, then pass the service name like this, .YouTube service. This basically tells Android, hey, I have a custom service class here and I want to know about it when my app runs. Without this step, Android won't recognize our service. Alright, now that it's registered, let's jump back to our YouTube service class And now let's talk about the real brain of our starter service, onStartCommand. Think of it like this. If onCreate sets up the service, onStartCommand is where the real background work happens, whether that's downloading files, playing music, or running any background task your app needs. Now say it has 3 parameters: intent, flags, and start ID. So what is this intent? Well, every time we call start service from a component like an activity, Android sends this intent right here. The best part, we can attach extra data to this intent. For example, we could send the file URL or a song name that the service needs to process. Think of intent as a delivery package, and inside that package, we can put any details of the service needs to get the job done. Next, we have flags. Now here's the truth. As a beginner, you won't be using this much, but flags are like special signals from the system. They tell us things like, hey, I'm restarting your service because it was killed in the background. Should I continue the last job or start fresh? Most of the time you can just ignore it. But it's good to know this is where Android communicates special instructions. Finally, we have start ID. Think of this as a unique ticket number for each start request. Every time you call start service, Android gives that request its own ID. So if multiple tasks are running, you know exactly which one to stop or track. And what about this return value? This is where we tell Android what to do if our service gets killed. It's like asking Android, if I am killed, do you want me to restart or just stay dead? We usually return either start sticky or start not sticky here. For example, a music player would use start sticky because even if the system restarts the service, we still want the music to keep playing. By default, this super dot onStartCommand doesn't really do anything special. So we usually replace it with either start sticky or start not sticky, depending on what behavior we want. Then we have onDestroy. This is called when the service is stopped or killed. Think of it as the cleanup zone, the place where you shut down background threads, close database connections, or free up any resources your service was using. Basically, if onCreate is where we set things up, then onDestroy is where we clean up the mess, packing everything away before the service shuts down. Finally, we have onBind. Now, for a started service, we don't really use this. It's mainly for bound services, where other components can bind to the service and directly interact with it. Since we're not doing that here, we'll just leave it as it is and moving on. Alright, our service skeleton is all set. We have got onCreate, onStartCommand, onDestroy, and even onBind ready to go. Now it's time to give this service some real action. We'll add a simple 10 seconds countdown, simulating something like a file download. We'll use countdown timer because it's simple, beginner friendly, and perfect for demonstrating how our starter service runs step by step. Alright, let's start coding our countdown. First, I'll create a countdown timer object at the top of the class, so you can easily start and stop it later. Private countdown timer. Now we can initialize our countdown timer inside onCreate, because this method is called only once when the service is first created, no matter how many times we call start service. But remember, onStartCommand gets triggered every single time we call start service. So if we need to initialize something inside onStartCommand, we have to make sure the service isn't already running. Otherwise, we might accidentally start multiple timers. So how do we handle this? It's super easy. We just create a boolean variable to track the running state. Like this. Private boolean is running equal to false. By default this will be false. Now inside onStartCommand we can check if the service is not running, then start the countdown. If not is running, then is running equal to true. So basically the first time we call start service, is running will be false. So the code inside this if block will run, and we immediately mark is running equal to true to show that our service is active. Now if we call start service again while the service is still running, this condition won't execute because is running is already true. This prevents multiple countdowns or tasks from starting at the same time. The only way this if runs again is if we stop the service and start it fresh. One more important thing. Inside onDestroy, we should reset this is running back to false. Because when the service is destroyed, we want to make sure that the next call to start service can trigger the countdown again from the beginning. So at the very top of onDestroy, just add is running equal to false. Now inside this if condition, let's initialize and start our countdown timer. Type countdown timer equal to new countdown timer. Hit tab and here pass two values. 10,000 for 10 seconds total, and here 1000 for 1 second interval. Then just call .start at the end. Easy. Inside onTick will log the progress every second, and when the timer is done, onFinish will fire. That's where we will log download complete and stop the service using stop self. Let's do it. I'll type int progress equal to 10 minus this variable millisunit finished divide by 1000. Now put them in parentheses and then multiple with 10. And finally also cast this to int. This means out of the 10 seconds, I subtract how many seconds are left and then multiply by 10 to get a nice percentage like 10%, 20%, 30% and so on. Now inside this onFinish method, let's print another log. Something like download complete. And remember we talked about stop self in the previous video. We can call this anywhere in our service when we feel the task is completed. So right here in onFinish, I will call stop self. This means as soon as our countdown finishes, the service will automatically stop and get destroyed. Finally, inside onDestroy, we'll clean up and release our resources. I will add a quick check to stop the countdown if it's still running. If countdown timer not equal to null. If countdown timer not equal to null, then countdown timer dot cancel. This ensures we don't have a timer running in the background after the service is gone. And of course, let's add one last log message here. Log E. And here type service destroyed. This way we can see exactly when the service is cleaned up in Logcat. One last tweak. We will change the return value of onStartCommand. Start sticky. I'm using start sticky here because I want Android to restart the service. Alright, now it's time to actually start our YouTube service from an activity. If I show you the layout XML file, I have already added two buttons. See, start download and stop download. And in our activities Java file, we already have the button click listeners set up. Nothing fancy, just basic on-click events. To start our YouTube service, I'll create an intent pointing to the YouTube service class, just like this. Intent equal to new intent. Then pass here main activity dot this, then YouTube service dot class. Now I'll call start service and pass this intent here. That's all we need to start the service. To stop our YouTube service, we will use the same intent. Let's copy these lines and paste here. But this time we will call stop service. As soon as this runs, onDestroy in our service class will be triggered and we will see the service destroyed log in the Logcat. Alright, our service is ready. Now it's time to build and test it. Let's run the app. Alright, app is installed. First, I will open Logcat and filter it by our tag name, YouTube service. Perfect. Now we will only see the logs coming from our service. Let's click on start download. See, service created and service started. Also see, downloading 10%, 20%, 30%, just like a real download. Now I will minimize the app and look at that. The download is still continuing in the background. That's the real power of a started service. It doesn't depend on the activity or UI being open. As long as the service is running, our task keeps going. Even if the user navigates away from the app, it only keeps running as long as the process is alive. Let's recap what we have done. We learned how to create our first started service from scratch. We explored what lifecycle methods, onCreate, onStartCommand and onDestroy. We built a practical 10 seconds countdown demo using countdown timer. We connected the service with our activity using start and stop buttons. And finally we tested everything in Logcat to see how it all works in real time. But wait, what if we want to perform a heavy task, something like downloading a big file or uploading data? If we run that code directly inside onStartCommand, our app will freeze and nobody wants that. In the next video, we will fix this by using thread. And I will show you the right way to run a long-running task in a service. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to follow the rest of the series and drop a comment if you faced any errors or have questions. Thank you so much for watching guys. See you soon in the next one.